Chapter 8. The weight of indecision pressed heavily on Naina's chest as she sat in the empty rehearsal hall, staring at the polished wooden floors that had been her world for the past several weeks. The echoes of music and movement still lingered in the air, but tonight, there was only silence. Paris. She had spent years fighting for recognition, struggling to keep her art alive in a world that valued commerce over culture. And now, a dream opportunity was within her grasp, one that could change everything. But her heart was tangled in something she hadn't foreseen. Aditya, since the night he had first stepped into her world, challenging her, frustrating her, and, if she was honest with herself, understanding her in ways no one else had, she had felt herself slipping. He had a way of seeing through her walls, of making her feel both exposed and safe at the same time. And yet, there was always a part of him that remained locked away. As she closed her eyes, the memory of their rooftop dance returned, the quiet intimacy of it, the stolen moment when the lines between them had blurred. She had wanted to believe it meant something, but doubt was a relentless thing. And tonight doubt came with a name. Mega. Aditya stepped into his penthouse, rolling his shoulders in exhaustion. The anniversary event was days away, and everything was in place, except the one thing that mattered most. Naina had been distant ever since she told him about the Paris offer. He could sense the hesitation in her eyes, the unspoken questions between them. And for the first time in his life, he didn't know how to fix it. As he poured himself a drink, a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. "You look like a man carrying a burden, Aditya." He turned sharply to find Mega standing in his living room, her usual air of effortless confidence intact. His patience was already thin. "You shouldn't be here." Mega ignored the warning in his tone and poured herself a drink from his bar. "I thought you'd want to hear what I have to say." "I don't." She smirked. "Are you sure about that? Because I think Naina might." At the mention of Naina's name, Aditya's grip tightened around the glass. "What are you playing at, Mega?" She took a measured sip, her eyes gleaming with something dangerous. "I did some digging, Aditya, and I found something interesting. Something I'm sure Naina doesn't know." Aditya's heart slowed, a sinking feeling settling deep in his gut. Mega set down her glass and folded her arms. "Did you ever tell her about the Kapoor land deal?" His blood ran cold. "That was years ago," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Mega nodded. "Yes. Years ago, when Singhania Industries was expanding into new projects. The Kapoor family owned prime land that your father wanted, and you were the one who negotiated the deal. A deal that left Naina's father ruined." Aditya's jaw clenched. The past was an ugly thing, one he had buried beneath layers of calculated decisions and justifications. He had been younger then, desperate to prove himself to his father. He hadn't thought about the names behind the numbers. He hadn't thought about who he was hurting. And now it was about to destroy everything. Mega leaned in, lowering her voice. "You should tell her before someone else does." Aditya didn't reply. He was already moving toward the door. When Naina received Aditya's message asking to meet at the rehearsal hall, she felt the weight of inevitability settle over her. She found him standing in the center of the dimly lit studio, hands in his pockets, tension lining his face. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice unusually tight. Naina folded her arms. "I got the same message from Mega earlier today. She seemed very eager to tell me something about you." Aditya exhaled sharply. "Naina. She told me about the Kapoor land deal." The words landed like a physical blow, and he saw it in her eyes. The betrayal, the hurt, the realization that the man she had trusted had once been responsible for her father's downfall. "Naina, it wasn't personal." She let out a bitter laugh. "Not personal. My father poured everything he had into that land. It was his legacy. And your company destroyed him. You destroyed him." He took a step closer, desperation flickering in his gaze. "I didn't know. Not then. I was just doing what my father expected of me." Her eyes flashed with anger. "That's your excuse? That you were just following orders?" "Naina, if I could undo it, I would." "But you can't," she whispered. "And now I understand why you helped me, why you paid for the studio's rent. It wasn't generosity. It was guilt." Aditya's throat tightened. "That's not true. Isn't it?" The silence between them was deafening. Finally, Naina shook her head. stepping back as if putting distance between them would make the truth hurt less. I can't do this, Aditya. I can't look at you and not see the man who took everything from my family. A sharp breath left him. Please. I'm done, she said, her voice breaking. With this partnership. With whatever this was. Aditya's chest tightened, a rare feeling of helplessness creeping in. Naina, don't do this. But her decision was already made. I leave for Paris next week, she said softly. I was hesitant before. But now, I have nothing keeping me here. And with that, she turned and walked away. He didn't stop her. He couldn't. Because for the first time in his life, he realized that some things weren't meant to be salvaged. Some things were simply meant to be lost. Chapter